Hi, this is Myra with Boutique Paint. I would like to show you a paint layering technique. Um, this kind of gives you a nice kind of old-fashioned, dirty, grunge look, like it's been there maybe for a while. And I did two different in treatments. This is wax with the dark and decrepit dark dust, and this is side with the wax with the white dust, and this is just without anything here. So this kind of gives you more of a beachy feel. This gives you more like it's been there in the back of grandma's shed forever. And then you could use this. This is just a sample board, but you can use it, you know, on little DIY projects, or you could use it on a piece of furniture. Today I'm going to do a sample board like this, but I also have this frame that I pulled out. So the nice thing about the new DIY Cottage colors all in one is it gives us the opportunity to skip a step in a process like this. The reason being, this is an all-in-one paint, so the top coat is already in it. So you don't have to do a top coat process before you do the next step. I am using the new crockery paint, and before you open it, shake it up really good, stir it. The reason why you want to shake it and stir it really good is because it is a one step, so everything needs to be mixed back in. It's not like the other paint. So you got to get the top coat mixed in there good. You got to get your color pigment mixed in good. But I'm just going to start by, and you can use any color you want for the base coat. I just picked this because it was a good neutral. The new colors, the other two new colors would be a great, any of the colors actually would be great. The new blue is just really, really pretty. I just got through painting a desk with it, and it is just such a beautiful color. I think it's Blue Hills. It's so new, I haven't memorized the name of it yet. So I'm just going to give a good top coat to this. And when you're trying out new things, new paint techniques and stuff like that, you can go ahead and try it right on the piece of furniture, and know as long as you don't put the wax on it, that at any point in time you can say, I like it, I don't like it, I need to change it, and you can change it up. But sometimes it's nice to do a sample board or a sample project, like I'm going to do the frame here, just to get an idea if you like the color combinations that you picked, you like, you know, the way it's turning out, so on. So I'm going to set this one aside. The reason why I chose a frame for this sample is because it has a little bit of, you know, the highs and lows, where sometimes our furniture, if you're painting a dresser, it's got some, you know, it could be just completely flat. And so you don't know if this technique would work on something that's maybe a little bit more ornate versus just a flat dresser. So I thought I'd paint up the frame. You could also do this with the molds, you know, put some molds on the piece of furniture or the frame and do this technique. So as we're waiting for the board and the frame that I just painted to dry, I'm going to take a little bit of Farm Fresh and put it into a plastic cup, and then I'm going to take some of DIY's Dark and Decrepit, and all these products are DIY paints products, and I'm going to put a little bit of that in here. Now the Dark and Decrepit is not a paint. It is better described as like, it almost works like a top coat, but you wouldn't want that as a top coat, but it looks beautiful on raw wood. Let me just just take the back of that. I'll put a little bit on there so you can see. It can work as a stain, but it's got a built-in top coat in it. So when that dries, that's all you need. But that makes a very pretty color, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do now with these is I'm going to turn them into washes. So I'm going to add water to them and mix them up so they're quite a bit thinner. I'm probably putting just a smidge over a half in each one of these. Find my stir stick. I thought I had another one here. I'm just gonna mix that up. See how it's just kind of a wash now? Get all of your good stuff in there. Nice and mixed. I'll also mix this up a little bit better once I put in my brush. I'm going to be using a chip brush for the next part. Mixed up nice and actually I can get that in there too. All right. And I may need to mix up a little bit more, but this will get me started. And that's one nice thing. You don't have to mix up a ton of it. You can mix up more as you go. That way you don't have any, hopefully too much left over. This is from my sample board and it dried in there. And I thought, boy, I bet you if I put just a smidge of water in there and let it sit for a little bit, it would probably rehydrate up nicely. Probably not completely, but it would probably get some color. You could do some watercolor effects with it. So let's go ahead and get that out of there. So the nice thing about the one step is this has already got the top coat on it. So let me show you. I don't know if you can see, but there's a sheen. It's a very nice sheen. So it's got the top coat. So when I do this next step, normally what I'd have to do if I use just regular DIY paint is I would have to put a top coat over it. Otherwise, the colors will lift off through this process. This way, I don't have to do anything but paint that first coat. And you can see it's not necessarily wanting to just really stick to. This is the problem with chip brushes, especially inexpensive chip brushes. I'm sure there's some nice ones out there that don't shed, but I have the cheap ones for this. And you can do any color combination. I am doing, well, first of all, I think that the crockery goes with almost any color. So that's one of the reasons why I picked it as a base color. But if you got the two colors that you want, probably you want to be complementary colors, unless you're one of those people that loves like bright and vibrant coloring, then you could put, you know, a orange and a purple or whatever together. I'm going to dry this with my hair dryer. So I'm going to spray down a rag, get it nice and moist ahead of time, pull off the little cruddy pieces. And then I'm going to dip it into this. And actually, I think I want this just a little bit runnier. So I'm just going to and you don't have to put this everywhere. Oh, now I sprayed my board, but we're just going to keep going. So I got some on there, and I'm just going to, and this probably is not the best rag. I was thinking that it's very textury, so you probably want a rag that doesn't have, unless you want to add the texture, then by all means add the texture. But basically, I'm just taking this and I'm kind of going along. It doesn't have to go everywhere, but I'm just kind of putting it on, and it's even making little swipes. That's kind of cool. But what I'm trying to do is I'm taking off some of the blue while putting on some of the brown. So I'm just basically blotting down and kind of turning just a smidge. Not, but just like a tiny turn. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and you can see that I've got some of the underneath color showing through. I've got some of the Farm Fresh showing through. I've got a little bit of the dark and decrepit, and I think actually I want a smidge more dark and decrepit, so I'm going to just dab it back in there. And this time, instead of twisting, I'm just going to kind of dab on. Let's say, don't absolutely love. Go back in with this color, and you can go over it again. And you can keep just playing with it and manipulating it. This is why I suggest doing a sample board first, or a sample piece first, just to kind of get a feel for it. See, and as you're doing it, write it down. Always write down what you're doing, because if something happens and you need to walk away for a little bit, you don't want to come back and go, okay, what was it that I just did? What combinations did I just do? Did I add the one more coat of paint on top? So that's kind of a cool look too, but I think I don't have enough showing through, so I'm going to take my rag again. Now I'm just going to kind of blot it a little bit lighter. First thing we're going to do, once again, is we're going to go in here. And honestly, if you like just this look, that's good too. It's kind of a cool striping effect that the paint's doing. You can let it dry. You could add clear wax and be done. Now, the other thing that you could do once you've gotten your desired look, if you want to, at that point, you can add IOD products. You can add a paint inlay by using a clear coat over the top. You can use, and the reason why you're using a clear coat is because otherwise it would cover it up. You could add a transfer at that point. As long as you haven't added the wax, you can add things. You just have to make sure, give it 24 hours to dry so that you know that it's completely dry and ready to take whatever you're putting on there. So once again, I'm just taking, and I'm not going to do it on the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of do it on the corners. And this is lifting pretty well on its own. I'm not having to twist it all. It seems to be wanting to lift off pretty well. So I'm going to use clear wax. And if you like it just the way it is and you don't think you want to add any dust or any dark wax, and you can just clear coat it. But I'm not one to leave things alone. So I'm going to get a little bit of this wax. And it will darken up as you're waxing it, because we're using, the top coat is the mineral paint. So as it gets wet, of course, it's going to darken up, but it'll dry. And I'll go back to the lighter color. And they definitely have two different feels as you're painting it versus it being dry. So I'm going to do this a little different than how I normally do it, since this is the sample board. So I've got my clear wax over the entire thing. I'm going to take some of the dark and decrepit dust, and I usually just put it on the paper I'm working on, because it doesn't take much. Matter of fact, that's too much probably, but for a sample board. But luckily we're not going to use that color. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do white on the frame. So on this edge, I'm just going to put some of the dark and decrepit. And I'm not going to put it over the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of put it around the edges, maybe in the center. And it's not showing up a whole lot yet, because as the wax dries, this will show up more. But you need, for the dust, you need the wax to be a little bit new and tacky on there. That's the white. I don't want to do the white. So I'm going to do a little bit of the dark wax. Now, if you open up your dark wax and it looks like that, it's okay. It's just a little bit of separation. That's the wrong brush. I keep different brushes for different things. That's actually, I think I mixed up my brushes myself. But see, you can just, it's just the waxes separating. So you can just mix them together. So I'm just going to take this, because now I got a lot on there. I'll just dab it off to the side, because that is way too much. And once again, I'm just going to go in around the edges. And you're thinking, that looks like crap, right? No, you don't leave it like that. I'm going to grab a paper towel, or you can grab a rag. And because you've already got your wax on there, it's not going to really embed itself. If you don't have the wax, it will go inside and it become really dark. If that's what you want, great. Now, say, oh, this corner is really dark and I don't like it. Take a little bit more of your wax, put it down, and then you can rub more off. So don't panic. But I find the dark wax to be darker than the powder, and so that's one of the reasons why I personally like the powder better. That being said, if you're all into waxes, you do you. Okay, so now we're going to wax the frame. And once again, get the wax. I'm just going to do this corner for showing you. Then I'll finish it up and you can see the finished product when I'm done. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to add some of the white decrepit dust, because that's going to give it more of a beachy feel to it. So once again, I'm just going to pull off a little bit. I switch brushes. Actually, I think this pink brush, yes, this is my dust brush. I got pink in there. I guess it's one way to differentiate your brushes. And on this one, instead of just doing the corners, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to probably just do the whole thing and go all the way around. Now this, as well as the wax, if you think, you look at that and you go, well, that's kind of too powdery looking. Once again, take your paper towel. This has got some of the dark on it, but I'm going to just flip it here. Just go ahead and buff it a little bit. And if it's still too much, put a little bit more wax and then pull it again. It works just like the waxes as far as manipulating if you want more or less. I kind of like that white powdery look. Once it dries, once again, it'll look a little bit different. So let's get a little bit of the powder on the part that we didn't put the darker, the glazing darkened and decrepit. And it just adds a little bit too, lightens it up. And you don't have to put this everywhere. You can just put it in areas. You can just do the corners, whatever. So I definitely like the way this turned out. It is just so pretty.